Well, coming up on today's show, the BMW i4 is spied in its camouflage clothing. VW's boss in North America talks Tesla and many other things, and why a Formula One world champion is investing in EVs. Those stories and plenty more on today's podcast. Good morning, good afternoon and good evening wherever you are in the world. Welcome to EV News Daily for a brand new week. It's Monday the 28th of January 2019. Martyn Lee here, and I've been through every EV story I could find over the weekend, and there's loads going on as well, by the way, but I've picked out the big four that I think you need to know about to start your week, to save you time from surfing through all the different blogs, and picked out the big bits of info. As always, thank you to myev.com for helping make this show. It's the website in the USA where you can use as a marketplace, a free marketplace, all about buying and selling EVs, as more people this year start to open their browser and open Google and type in electric car. It's going to be a massive year for EVs, and one place that I'm sure plenty will head to, and maybe you will as well, myev.com. Welcome to the Patreon gang as well, a new member, a new executive producer of the podcast, Rajiv Narayan. And if I may, I just tell you, I got some of Raj's story, and I'd just like to pass this on. I don't always do this with people that email me, but I think Raj's story is so interesting, and in many ways typical of not exactly his circumstances, but the thought process people are going through. He says, my daughter and I love your podcast. We listen for almost a year now. My own personal EV story started in September 2 years ago at Hurricane Harvey, when it caused a shortage of gasoline in San Antonio, Texas. I'd been looking for an EV for a while, but the gas lines were long, and it prompted me to go to a local Chevrolet dealer, and I bought a Chevy Bolt. I drive 80 miles a day as a physician to multiple hospitals, and having an EV helped him get around and take care of patients. He has over 41,000 miles on the Bolt, and get this, he says, I love it. My daughter's learning to drive, and I bought her a Chevy Volt this month. What did I tell you about? I said this yesterday on the podcast. People who own Bolts and Volts, I've never heard anybody say a bad thing about them. I've read reviewers and I've read internet forums of, I don't like the seats in it. I think the seats need now they've improved the seats, I'll go and buy one. Right, yeah, but you're not actually an owner, are you? You haven't spent your own money on that car. You've just been a keyboard warrior and bitched about something on the internet. Well done, you. This is another story, another person who owns a Bolt and now a Volt as well, who just really enjoys those cars. It fascinates me because we can't buy them here. It's not as if I can go and try one out. We had the Ampera, we had the Vauxhall Ampera many years ago, but sadly, nothing else. Hey, let's start with this big BMW news. This is potentially huge news from another German automaker about to deliver, hopefully, a really great EV. Car Magazine here in the UK, which I'm a big fan of. Funnily enough, I work for the company, well, I do for the next 20 days, the company which owns it. So indirectly, although I have nothing to do with car and they have nothing to do with what I do, but I guess I could find Tim on the internal email if I looked for him. The writer of this article, Car Magazine, got hold of some pictures of a car carrier, and on the car carrier was a BMW in camouflage that looked very, very much like it is going to be the BMW i4. The sleek, low-slung iVision Dynamics concept from back in 2017 was a four-door Gran Coupe-style family car. It had concept car styling, and these things always get watered down a little bit, but it was always going to preview the third of the i models. i3, i8, i4. So BMW said at the time, and concept car stats sometimes going to be a bit wild and crazy, and you think, well, you can say what you want because you haven't got to make it. But they said 0 to 60 in 4 seconds. They said a top speed of 120. They said zero emissions range of 373 miles. That's too optimistic, it'll be lower, but real world it'll be around 280. However, figures that Car Magazine says wager sound remarkably feasible for a production EV 2 years away from the showrooms back in 2017. Well, now, Tim Pollard for Car Magazine says that if you look on the pictures, you'll see the fake exhaust pipes that they build into the camouflage. Yeah, if you look, you'll see them. It's brilliant. Unfortunately, because of German law, they also have to have big stickers on saying electric vehicle, which kind of gives it away. But nobody wants a high voltage accident, so it's good to have the stickers there to warn you. Well, the production-spec i4 saloon/sedan will use 2 electric motors, all-wheel drive, torque vectoring, potential for rear-wheel steering, and a semi-active air suspension as well. All of this is sounding remarkably like the Model 3, or bits of the Model S and the bits of the Model 3. It's very likely that BMW will follow Tesla's lead in offering different versions with different power outputs. The hotter version, you never know, could be the i4M, or maybe the MI4. Because it would normally be the M3 or the M4. So, MI? But then if you look at the badge, it looks like My 4. Yeah, I'm sure they'll work it out. I'm sure far smarter people at BMW are working this out than I am. This is super exciting because this kind of car is going to be a huge seller here in Europe. I know that saloon/sedans aren't flavour of the month in the US at the moment, and you know, fair enough, here in Europe, we do like our fair share of SUVs and crossovers as well, but this will be a really important car up there with the VW ID as well. As with all automakers selling cars in Europe, though, 2020 is the date. It's the key date when new emissions rules come into place. Even if they could get some on the road this year, like they'll be doing with the Audi e-tron, for instance, I don't think that they'll want to sell many of them. I think you want to build up demand and then hold off any real scale of deliveries until 2020. That's when you can use the zero emissions cars that you're selling to offset all of the emissions from your stinky diesels and your piston cars, and then hopefully the two will balance out and you won't get hit with any emissions fines. I'll put a link to Car Magazine in the show notes. You go check out the pictures for yourselves. They've kind of spread across the internet as well since Car printed them, but really, really fascinating to see. And just a very conventional, I know that some of that concept car styling would have been nice, but a very conventional shape. If it does have great specs, I know I talk down the miles by like 100 miles, but come on, 373 miles, that would be a very optimistic if they did it. Wow. But it, you know, if it's got a 70 kilowatt hour pack between 60 and 80, puts it in the right kind of price range for that kind of car, and you know, it won't be too heavy, and it's not an SUV, and you know, apart from the battery, which is a fair bit of weight, it's otherwise no reason to. It's not a crazy big SUV kind of car, so the mileage could be pretty reasonable on that. Let's move on to VW, which I mentioned a little while ago in a Motor Trend article talking to Scott Keogh. He is the CEO of VW of America. He's been talking in a roundtable discussion a couple of days ago, and he covers off lots of topics, but making Volkswagen matter in North America is his strategy. They say that VW has a 20-point share in China, a 15 share in Europe. In America, though, it's on a 2 share. He says we're going to have to operate as a company that matters and is ethical. We're moving into EVs, and hopefully we'll get redemption. Wow. It's interesting to hear VW using words like ethical and redemption, not because they don't stand for them, just because sometimes they haven't wanted to more openly discuss Dieselgate. Not that they've run away from it, just, I mean, you understand it. You're not going to rake over old ground. You want to launch your new cars and be excited about it, but it's interesting here in this interview, he's happy to go there, if you like, and I think that's a good thing. I think people like a little bit of humility sometimes. And an apology. I think that'll go down well. As for how electric cars might be shared in things like car sharing schemes, he says this, and I quote, "When you look at the total car market, there are projections that ride sharing and alternatives will peel off 3 to 4 million cars. We're not seeing that. Car sharing has had a huge impact on taxis and medallions, but no impact at all on purchases. As a brand, there are huge opportunities. We have an honest product at an honest price and transparency. That's why we're looking at third-party mobility," end quote. Pick out a couple of words from that quote if you want. We have an honest product, an honest price. We are transparent. This sounds like a very different VW interview. I've got to be honest, and I like it as well. Like I say, just a little bit of humility sometimes to go, hey, we're trying here. That's a difference from the VW before that were all about the big numbers. We are Mr. Billy Big Watsits. We're the biggest, we're the best, and all that kind of attitude, which is fine if you've got the cars to back it up, and they were making a lot of money as well. But I kind of like this. I kind of like this, hey, you know, we're finding our way with EVs kind of thing. On the subject of EVs in China, he said this, and I quote, "There is no debate China will be the explosive EV market. They need a lot of EVs because of congestion, smog and autonomy. They missed 20th century auto. They want to win new auto, EV, autonomous, connected. The situation for the US, from chips to sensors, for the most part, they are developed here," he says. "We need policies that build off that tech, that push innovation and change. As an American in America, it'd be a shame to lose the opportunity." End quote. And so, interesting thoughts on China's EV push. He mentions the smog, the congestion, the autonomy. You know, the other thing that you can't rule out is that the Chinese policymakers want to lead the world in EVs and renewables, actually, because that's, if you generate the power, then you get the power, if you know what I mean. If you can move the shift of world power from the oil countries to China. So there is more to it than simply smog, although that is, of course, part of it. And finally, he does mention the T word. Back to Scott Keogh, the CEO of VW North America, says this, and I quote, "We are arriving with a proper VW at a VW price, at a time when market sentiment and reaction and consumer sentiment is building. We are at equal footing. We have a scale advantage. It won't just be one product, it'll be a host of products. We have a good cadence. Right now, market share is 50% Tesla and 50% everyone else. Who is going to win the other 50%? That breakthrough product has not arrived yet." End quote. So again, there's, you know, a little bit of the kind of confidence coming through there. Hey, we've got the scale, we're going to launch a load of cars. And, you know, sometimes that's a criticism aimed at Tesla. Oh, you've only got 3 cars, have you? We make a ton over here. Yeah, but you're not actually doing it, and Tesla are making those 3 models. So there's a little bit of that, but then he comes back to it with giving Tesla the credit of where they are with 50% market share. It's a really interesting interview. You know, I love stuff like this to see where the policy thinkers and the people who work at that kind of level, that stratosphere of management, when they make public statements, they don't do it just for giggles. Everything they say, every word is carefully crafted. And there's always a PR person sitting, about an inch behind them that will either make eye contact with the journalist or simply say, "No, you don't write that, don't print that, he didn't mean that," or they'll jump in. But I mean, this guy knows what he's doing. He's a great speaker if you hear him talk, and that's an interesting interview. There's loads more to it, by the way. I'll put a link in the show notes. Right, 2 more stories. And the story of Rivian is a really interesting one. Rivian recently unveiled the R1S and the R1T, both on a big platform. The S for the SUV, the T for the truck, R1S, R1T. And I must admit, I was caught a little bit on the hop by that. Rivian are often described as the latest entrants in the EV space, but they've been around a long time, 10 years. Started off by making a little 2-seater, well, a 2+2 kind of coupe. That didn't work, and they've been raising money and doing this for a very long time, but with no actual products on the market. And so when they unveiled these really impressive cars, or trucks, really, I had a little bit of doubt, I must admit, to begin with. A little bit of confusion about where they were in terms of, is the factory ready? Are they fully tooled? I mean, how? So I've been looking into it just to understand it a little bit more, and I came across a great Autocar article I wanted to share with you. Rivian's a decade old, and it was known as Avera, A-V-E-R-A, Avera, when it first started. If you look in Google, you'll find a cryptic teaser image of that original car I mentioned, the Avera Coupe, under blue covers. It was never revealed, though, and it's never been public, really, until now. Says Mark Tishaw for Autocar Today. Well, Rivian, now 10 years old, and never having made a car, but does have cars designed, engineered, and ready to go. Plus, that factory I talked about, well, here's the detail then. The ex-Mitsubishi factory is being readied to build their cars in. Crucially, they're really well funded through investors as well, and have backed the various journeys that Rivian's co-founder has made. The founder and CEO, not co-founder, but the founder and CEO, RJ Scarinch, has moved the company in directions over the years and has finally found a direction he's really happy with. He says this, and I quote, "You look at the costs for a car company, You need huge capital, a large team, and everything costs. You need many hundreds of suppliers, and then a product to attract customers, and then you need time. Even if you had everything in place at the start, it would take 4 or 5 years. It's challenging. We started a company with none of those things. He reminds people. In a world of disruptive startups, Rivian's "our lips are sealed" approach has been pretty unique, actually. They haven't been putting out teaser images over the last 10 years on Twitter saying, oh, something's coming, you never know. They've really genuinely got on with things quietly. And, sometimes things are leaked and they make their way onto the internet and you wonder where that leak has come from. It's often companies giving friendly journalists or friendly bloggers or people who they want on side a heads up, a story. I mean, that's just the game, right? But nothing from Rivian has been leaked or teased. It has significant hurdles to overcome between now and the end of the year. They want to start production by the end of the year. And they've got that Mitsubishi factory to be converted. They say it's about halfway along the process. I'll put the Autocar article in the show notes for you to read. Right, finally, this is really, really interesting. The Formula One world champion, Nico Rosberg, has been talking at Davos in Switzerland at the World Economic Forum. Kling Technica has the lowdown on it. Now, at Davos, world leaders, global leaders, are deciding on the future for the rest of the world. Nico Rosberg was there to talk to them, and he's making sure that anyone with ears hears his message. He added that everything is going electric. He even said to them, Formula One, at some point, will have to go electric. Nico Rosberg's plan is simple. He wants to bring electric mobility to the mass market, and he's doing it. Well, firstly, by taking over his father's 20-year-old company. He's invested in the Formula E series. Nico Rosberg's invested in Uber, in SpaceX as well. He looks up to Elon Musk as being someone who's a thought leader and a visionary. He will announce his own EV startup within the next 2 weeks. And that's going to focus on green technology and the events industry. The company's backed not only by his own money, as well as partners from the traditional mobility industry. So we've mentioned things today, VWs at a VW price, a BMW i4 sedan/saloon, in other words, the Model 3 or the BMW 3 Series style car, and we've mentioned trucks and SUVs, and that all ties nicely into the brand new question of the week I'd love you to answer. Thanks to myev.com for sending us the question of the week. Keep your comments coming in. It's this: what kind of new car announcement does the most for EV publicity? Is it 250 mile an hour hypercars when you see those announced? Is it the go-anywhere trucks? Is it the truly affordable small family car? What kind of EV announcement do you think is best for publicity? You can let me know. Please email hello@evnewsdaily.com. You can leave a comment in the YouTube and Facebook comments. myev.com as well, you can go to as well. Well, with our extra supporter, thank you very much to making it 178. Rajiv gets us to 178 Patreon supporters. This show will always be made, by the way, whether you support the show or not. It will always be here every day. And if you can support the show, please check it out, patreon.com/evnewsdaily. Oh, someone picked me up on Twitter, or YouTube, actually, today. And typical internet went in a little bit with both feet. A bit of a hard tackle on me, and went, I hate the way that you say that, $5 or $10 a month is the same as a super posh coffee or a posh coffee. It's a terrible link to make, because for some people, they can't afford a takeaway coffee. Look. And so I replied to that person, I presume that gentleman, I replied to him saying, no, that's exactly what I mean. If you normally treat yourself to, that's why I say it like that. It's the kind of, if you have a $5 or $10 spare, I would appreciate your support. And if not, please don't. I'll make this show anyway. That's exactly the comparison I'm trying to make, because if you get to the end of the month and $5 is make it or break it, well, then you certainly shouldn't be buying takeaway coffee, and don't be supporting some idiot on the internet who makes a podcast. But if you do, if you have that luxury, then that's why I make that comparison, because this is an entirely optional thing, and no one should ever feel pressured into supporting this, as you should always feel free to walk past a Starbucks, because it's about 2 cents to make one at home. Well, thank you very much for everyone who supports the show. I'll put your names for exec producers and above in the show notes, as always. And there are 370 previous shows online for free where you get podcasts from. And you can point your podcast app to download EV News daily on all the usual platforms. If you hit subscribe, you get them first and free and automatically. If you can do one thing for me to start 2019, that would be to share the podcast. Get the word out there, and let's get more people thinking and maybe buying an EV. If you want to catch up with me over the next 24 hours, just search EV News Daily on your socials. Have a wonderful day. I'll catch you tomorrow.